Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Cuyahoga County Council regular meeting for Tuesday, April 24th. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Mr. Greenspan? Here. Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Brady?
Present.
Mr. Germana?
Here.
Mr. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Schron? Mr. Schron is absent this evening. Ms. Conwell?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Rogers?
Here.
Ms. Simon? Ms. Conley?
Here.
There's a quorum.
Madam President,
Oh, okay, Mr. Miller.
I move to excuse the absence of Councilman Tron.
All right, so moved and seconded to excuse the absence of Councilperson Schrein. Is there any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Please mark Mr. Schrein's absence as excused. Will you please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For our moment of silence tonight, we would like to recall the families of Jim and Wava King, who were killed early Monday morning in a senseless act of violence. May their families find peace during this difficult time. Also, we'd like to recognize the passing of Judge Peter Sikora, who served this county as a judge of the juvenile court for 23 years. He also served the legal community and the children of this community and made an outstanding contribution to this society. All right, item 5 on the agenda is public comment related to the agenda. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed in?
Yes, Madam President, we have several speakers this evening. The first is Rick Zamora.
Okay, if each one of you would come to the microphone and start by giving us your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here again. My name is Rick Zamora. I'm with Z-Tech Solutions. And again, I just want to talk a little bit about this Motorola proposed contract that potentially might be awarded today. You know, we're not going to talk about the faulty bid that Motorola submitted. I'm not going to talk about the suspicious testing or the result of favoritism that was blatant on this potential award, but really we're going to talk about the facts of the cost. If we look at this original contract, the original contract was bid for 500 and so radios. The original bid, the altered bid that Motorola submitted, was their bid came in with chargers at 1.3 million, 1.378. Realm Z-Tech came in at 1.09. That was $284,000 less we are than Motorola. You know, again, $284,552 less than Motorola's original faulty bid that was submitted. Now, if we look at the new bid, or the new amount, the not to exceed amount of $2,071,650. If we look at the cost of the Motorola radio and charger, $2,561. Our radios cost $2,032. Motorola, again, costs $529 more per radio. Okay, $529. If we carry that across, again, what you're going to get if you purchase Motorola radios is 809 radios. If you purchase the Realm radio, you will get 1,019 radios. That's 210 more radios that can serve your communities, that can serve your agencies, that can serve everybody that needs radios out there. If you look at what happened just a couple days ago, radios are faulty with the Motorola. Things happen, we understand. You know, same thing they're saying that our radio, something was wrong with our radio. We don't know what that was. We've asked for that radio back, so we don't know if it was a button that wasn't pushed properly. What happened with that radio? We'd like to know if that really was a bad radio, or if it was just user error because they weren't used to our radio. But again, you know, 210 more radios can go to the communities and to the people that desperately need communication to be able to do the things that they need to do, whether it's fire, safety, police, whatever it is. Our radios are 26% less 26% less than the Motorola radio, which is the same, it's equivalent, it's as good, if not better. Again, depending on who you ask, it's better than the Motorola radio. Again, with all the agencies and all the cutbacks that are happening, you know, what can you do with 210 more radios? You know, not to mention the fact that there's other agencies out there purchasing other radios. I can guarantee you they're paying a lot more than the $2,492 that Motorola has just quoted, which is now their new standard price, which, you know, gets to go to the state, county. Every agency now has to gets that price. So they've just driven their price down. So again, we hope that you look at us as a viable solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is James Dixon.
Thank you.
Mr. Dixon, you have 3
Madam
minutes.
President, and to the council, I'm Jim Dixon. I'm an attorney with France Ward. We represent Z-Tech Solutions, Mr. Zamora's company, in this protest. I'm here primarily to talk about the legal issues and the key testing issue in a little bit more legal terminology than Mr. Zamora is comfortable using. Many of you hopefully are aware that we spoke at the Public Safety Committee meeting on the 17th. Hopefully you've reviewed the transcript or the audio from that committee meeting. There was a lot of technical information presented. We don't want to get into a lot of that tonight. We're hopeful that you reviewed it and are aware of some of those issues. We will stay until the end if you have questions and be available to answer them. Let's talk generally about this procurement. From what we understand, there were 13 agencies that asked for a total of 1,500 radios. Z-Tech submitted the lowest dollar value bid for this award. Motorola submitted 2 bids. Their bids came in second and third. The one that the Public Safety Committee recommend that you adopt is the one that came in third. As Mr. Zamora indicated, that's about 26% higher in price, and Z-Tech can provide 210 more radios than Motorola, 210 more radios that the county can have in circulation for its first responders like fire, police, and EMS. Z-Tech's challenge is based primarily on 3 legal grounds. We outlined those grounds in a letter dated April 16th, so we're not going to get into that in too much detail right now. Suffice it to say that the committee made its determination, as far as we could tell, based primarily on the results of the testing. So we want to talk about that testing tonight. As a matter of law, post-bid testing such as that conducted in this instance cannot be subjective. It must be objective. It must be fair. It must be guided by fixed rules. Those are all sound bites from the leading cases that we quoted in our letter. Otherwise, courts will void an award. They will void a contract. They will enjoin an award. That's what happened on the Cleveland Browns Stadium, if any of you followed that closely in the last few weeks. This testing was highly subjective. It was like handing out a couple of BlackBerries and a couple of iPhones, asking for a test drive and a bit of subjectivity in terms of what is your preference. Not surprisingly, those who have been using Motorola wanted to stay with Motorola. Not a surprise, they've been doing it for many years. If you're interested in what can be seen from that testing, there were 2 criteria that appeared that the county was interested in looking at. One of those was RSSI, which is signal strength. The other is clarity. 2 out of 3 voters who tested side by side found that Realm had superior radio signal strength. Then when you look at the clarity, 3 out of the 5 indicated that Motorola was a little bit more clear, and 2 scored at a tie. So if you're going to look at the county's testing, it was a draw. Realm succeeded on RSSI. Motorola was slightly ahead on the clarity. With my time running out, I will just simply conclude by saying it is on that slim basis, a draw on the common elements of the testing, that you are going to be deciding whether or not to award this to Motorola or not. We ask you to reject the award to Motorola and award this contract to Realm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. I will point out that the transcript of the particular hearing was sent to each member of council.
The next speaker is Michael Engelhaupt.
Thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak here for a few moments. My name is Mike Engelhaupt. I'm with Realm Wireless. I'm located in Dublin, Ohio. Our company is an American company. We're headquartered in West Melbourne in Florida. Just a couple comments to follow up Mr. Dixon and Mr. Zamora. Our radios that we bid here are compliant with the APCO P25 standard, which was required in this bid. Our radios have been approved by independent labs with structured criteria, and it's been approved in several states and several cities. For instance, it's been approved in the state of Wisconsin, West Virginia, Wyoming, Montana. Here in the state of Ohio, our radios have been tested by Butler County, been approved. Been tested on the system in Columbus, been approved. I have radios with the Marks people here in Cleveland, no problems at all. So we were very dismayed to find that there was some issues with our radios. We've asked for that radio that was deemed to be inoperable back. We still have not received it to do an analysis. Again, our radios are compliant. We believe that the recommendation is based on a test that has some faults, and we are low by 26%. We would appreciate the award by council. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Gus Hoyes.
Excuse me. Good evening, council. Bear with me, I'm kind of losing my voice here. First of all, I'm representing the Hispanic contractors here at Cleveland, Ohio. It's about 37 Hispanic contractors. Mr. Zamora is a member of our organization. This came to our attention from, and I don't want to get into the whole diversity and inclusion piece, but from a small business perspective. In the past, you know the history here in Cuyahoga County, as we all know. We've had issues with small businesses being able to bid properly, being able to have capacity to perform, and thirdly, be able to get bonded. Here we have a minority business who have met all those criteria. Bottom line, not to save time here, all I can say is we definitely would not want to see this awarded to Motorola. Just from past practices and what we've come to basically seek out and see in our own format. So with that being said, I'm here on behalf of the Hispanic contractors saying that we will file an injunction, an injunction tomorrow if it is awarded. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, no one else has signed in to speak.
All right, thank you. Item 6, the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting from April 10th. The minutes of the meetings have been circulated or in your packet. If you had an opportunity to review them, and if so, we'll take a motion to adopt the minutes as circulated.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Ms. Simon and seconded by Ms. Conwell. Is there any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes are adopted. Item 7, I'd just like to say that on Saturday, I had an opportunity to represent the county at the dedication of the Warrensville Heights Library. It's a new county library. It is an outstanding facility. That community has worked for approximately 7-8 years to get that project going. And it has like 60 computers and it has a special room for kids. And it is really an outstanding example of our county library system, which is one of the finest library systems in the nation. And I think we should all be commended. And they're actually building next door a YMCA, so it's really an area of economic development, in that area. So if you get a chance to stop at the Warrensville Library, I really would recommend it. It's really great to see. On a more mundane note, I would point out that item 12 on the agenda will be moved to the end of the agenda for it's an executive session. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Madam President,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I need to abstain on the vote to approve the minutes since I wasn't at the last meeting. I just need that reflected in the minutes because otherwise she'll record it as 10-0.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, you and I had both had the pleasure on Friday of going down to Franklin County. Council President Connolly and I serve on the Board of Directors of the County Commissioners Association of Ohio, although neither of us are county commissioners, but we were there, and so was the council president actually from Summit County, and we also brought some staff down. So I think Mr. Nani came down representing the council staff, and we had a number of folks that came down, not really for the meeting, but to compare notes with the administration of the county commissioners of Franklin County. So we had folks from our development department, and Wade Steen came down to his former stomping grounds and was greeted with hugs and tears and so forth. And a lot of other folks that we had down there. And it was a very productive, actually, exchange because there's so much that they have in common with us. It's the second note comparing exercise that we did. We did this last year with Summit County. And actually, the Franklin County folks found it so helpful. They're planning a trip to come up here that I expect them to do later in the year. We're also next on our list is to go out to Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, or in Pittsburgh area, and I'll let council know about that if any of you'd like to go out there at the same time and meet with your colleagues and with the Allegheny County Council. But I've really found those. We don't have to travel very far to really have some interesting comparisons and conversations. We're already having a lot of those discussions at a staff level because as many counties across Ohio have gotten used to getting calls from our departments as we insist that they have peer comparison numbers for our county staff process. So they're already in the habit of avoiding our calls because not all of them want to provide that information. But I found it to be very helpful, and I would extend that invitation to the council if you'd like to go out to Allegheny County with us sometime in the very near future. Two other things I just want to make the council aware of. One is that we had been talking actually internally, and Melvin Davis, who as I think you know is a veteran of our armed forces. I had asked him to look into if there was any ceremonies that we could either initiate or participate in terms of marking the end of the Iraq conflict and making sure that veterans are welcomed home who have served there, who have done their duty there. And we're also looking, as I mentioned in the State of the County address, we're looking at other substantive policy initiatives in that area. We're continuing to work on that. We are going to be participating, and I would invite council to participate in it with me. It's this Sunday, isn't it, Melvin? This Sunday on April 29th, there is the 10th annual Rally for the Troops and Welcome Home ceremony. This has been put on by some veterans organizations and some family members for 10 years. It's taking place at Gateway Plaza, which is between Progressive Field and Quicken Loans. And so we were asked to participate, and I wanted to pass that on to you. They sent their own press release out. We didn't send our own press release out on it yet, but I wanted to make sure council was aware of it. It's traditionally been pretty well attended, and I think it makes sense for us to participate in that, so I would invite you to do that. Also on Monday, April 30th, at 11 a.m. in the County Administration Building, where we, in our media room there, we're going to be announcing the next stage in our County Health Alliance that we announced last year. But I wanted to let council know that it has continued to progress. When we announced it last year, we had a small event over at the City Club in Cleveland. We had a couple cities that we had represented there. We had the major hospital systems were represented as well, Clinic and UH and Metro and St. Vincent's. And we said that our hope was that we were going to provide programming options and partnerships for local cities to partner with us and then begin to implement best practices in the area of health and wellness. And that we hoped that we would get at least 10 suburbs to partner with us. It looks like that by Monday, we're probably going to be closer to 20 suburbs that have agreed to partner with us. And it's part of it was one of the goals we outlined in the State of the County, but it's also this kind of contradiction in terms that we have, where we have the greatest healthcare institutions on the planet, but it is not reflected in our public health outcomes, whether you look at smoking or obesity or diabetes or all those other preventable health conditions that we think that we can affect. And a lot of these cities have done these kind of on their own, but it hasn't been in a coordinated fashion. It hasn't gotten the support at the county level that it should. So I would invite you to participate with us at that announcement on Monday morning as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That really was a very interesting meeting to hear about the different counties and how the very small counties interact with the larger counties. So I was really glad to go to that. And there is a one-day seminar, June the 8th, at the Friday, June 8th and 9th, and I think many members of council tend to go to that.
Well, there were two things too also that you kind of jarred my memory about that we should bring to the council's attention, I think, as soon as possible. One is they had some suggestions about the way that some of their bid specifications were written that I think it makes sense for us to look at, because some of the counties are writing their bid specifications in a way so that other counties can take advantage of their bidding process, and so that you have a guaranteed price that other counties can then take advantage of. And I think we need to look at that. The other issue was on the fracking issue, or hydraulic fracturing if you're in the industry, that issue. And that was a big topic of conversation for those counties that are where widespread drilling is actually going on, but it is going to affect Cuyahoga County in a number of ways, and positively and possibly negatively. But one of the things that I think it makes sense for this county to do is to have an economic development strategy around the spin-off jobs that will be created by the drilling itself. And but there's a lot of discussion about not just that there's going to be extraction of that natural resource, but whether or not the state and the counties are going to position themselves to take advantage of that economic activity to really create an industry. Because there are plenty of examples of states and countries where a big company comes in, they extract a natural resource, and they leave, and there really isn't, they don't really leave behind a wealthier community. And the City Club actually recently hosted a energy sector expert who's made about $1 billion in this, that gave us some free advice, basically saying that this is the time to position your state and Northeast Ohio to take advantage of the industry with all of the supply chain possibilities that are out there, as opposed to just hoping that somehow you're going to get a windfall from the drilling itself. So they had an extended discussion about that at the CCAO meeting, and we're going to convene a little task force within our own development department to make sure that we're being as strategic as we should. And if there are discussions that any council members would like to have on that topic, we're happy to have those with you.
And we also, Mr. Nani and I talked with Mr. Long, the executive director, and he's going to come up and give us some programs from their wealth of information. So we'll be setting that up in the next couple of months.
Great.
The contracts executed by the county executive are an attachment to the agenda. They're also available online if anyone wants to take a look at those. All right, item 9, receipt of report submitted to council.
This is a summary compilation of proposed charter amendments recommended by council members and administration.
All right, this evening we will receive a compilation of proposed charter amendments for a possible placement on the ballot of November 2012. And these were all put together by individual council persons who made suggestions. Council is considering placing a limited number of amendments on the ballot this year for the reasons of clarity. It will cost the county less money to place these amendments on the ballot in the even numbers years. Those of us who have been through this charter for the first year know that there's some operational issues, some issues of clarity that we need corrected, and those are essentially the items that we're going to be talking about. I'm accepting this compilation in the form of a report, and we'll be sending it to the Rules, Council Rules, Ethics, and Charter Committee chaired by Mr. Greenspan. Mr. Greenspan will be organizing the committee during May and June to discuss the proposals, and I think we have a meeting next Tuesday is the first meeting to make recommendations to the entire council. It is possible that some of the proposals will actually be referred to the Charter Review Commission. I think we also are anticipating having at least 2 town hall meetings, one east and west, to present these proposals, and we're in the process of planning those. Proposals that the committee recommends for council approval will be introduced as individual resolutions sometime in June or July. Council will likely meet as a committee of the whole one or more times during July to fully discuss any proposed resolutions from the committee. All the charter resolutions will have a full 3 readings before council, so there'll be no suspension of the rules. Each one will have 3 complete readings. There will be a multitude of committee and council meetings at which the public will be there, and you're in contempt of court, Ms. Cowell. In which time the public will have their input. And of course, any charter changes must be voted on by the voters. So all we can do is make recommendations, and they will have to go to the voters of this community. All right. So item 9 is referred formally to the Council Rules and Charter Review Committee. All right, item 10, consideration of a motion of council for first reading and referral to committee.
Motion number 2012-0016, a motion confirming the county executive's appointment of Bonita Tewin to serve on the Cuyahoga County Justice Center Building Committee and declaring the necessity that this motion become immediately effective.
This matter will refer to the Human Resource Committee. Ms. Tewin wears so many different hats. I don't know if I can make this recommendation that she takes on another task, but we'll refer it to the committee. Item 11.
Resolution number 2012-0071, a resolution supporting the Metro Health Systems and State of Ohio's Medicaid waiver demonstration application to the United States Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
This matter is time sensitive, and they've had, and it's important that we have it passed right away. So we have a motion to suspend the rules pursuant to 12A and 9D, Ms. Simon?
Madam President, I move we suspend the rules.
Second.
I moved by Ms. Simon and seconded by Mr. Gallagher to suspend the rules. Any discussion?
Chairperson?
Let me suspend the rules first.
Oh, I'm
All
sorry.
right. All those in favor indicate by...
Suspending the rules, sorry.
All right. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. The ayes have it. The rules are suspended. Mr. Brady.
Yes, I think everyone will remember what this is about. This resolution is to support Metro Health and the state of Ohio in applying for the U.S. Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services for the waiver that will allow 20,000 uninsured Cuyahoga County residents to be covered under Medicaid starting this summer. We've had quite a few meetings since this proposal was brought forward by Metro to use the so-called subsidy to Metro for this purpose. We are one of the first in the country to be approaching this with the Affordable Health Care Act in mind. We have had a great ally in Patrick Beatty, the Assistant Director for the Ohio Department of Jobs and Services, and he's been most helpful and also assures us that literally regardless of how the Supreme Court decision comes out, in June regarding what parts of or all of the act may be stricken down or not, that under current Social Security law that this waiver is still viable. And that was a great relief, and I think we look forward to this possibility of drawing down 64 cents on every dollar of this waiver, and I would just recommend that the council support the administration's resolution and to support Metro Health and the state of Ohio in applying for this waiver.
All right. Any other questions or discussion?
Madam President.
Mr. Miller?
I agree and would like my name added, please.
Add Mr. Miller's name?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Rogers? Mr. Jones?
Simon.
Connolly? Gallagher? Germana? Sean's not here.
Me as well.
Is that Mr. Greenspan also expanding Medicare?
This is a great use of taxpayer dollars.
Well put.
Madam Chair, I've adding council members Miller, Rogers, Jones, Simon, Conley, Gallagher, Germana, and Greenspan.
Yes.
And we will also need a motion on the floor in order.
All right, we haven't had a motion yet? That's right. All right, do we have a motion to adopt? All right, moved by Mr. Brady, and seconded by Mr. Gallagher. All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. All right, we're skipping item 12, which we will do at the end of the agenda. Item 13, committee report and consideration of ordinances for council for second reading. And Madam Clerk, do you want to read both of these at the same time? Because they really deal with the same issue, and there's going to be some discussion, so you might as well just read them both.
Can certainly do that, and the intent for both of these is to move it to the May 8th
Right.
meeting for third reading.
So this will just be for second reading, and then we'll have some discussion, and it'll go on the agenda for May 8th.
Ordinance number 2011-0056, an ordinance establishing a general fund balance, reserve policy, and replenishment plan, and declaring the necessity that this ordinance become immediately effective. And ordinance number 2011-0058, an ordinance establishing a Health and Human Services levy fund balance, reserve policy, and replenishment plan, and declaring the necessity that this ordinance become immediately effective.
All right, Mr. Miller.
Madam President and my colleagues, I strongly recommend ordinances 2011-56 and 58, which create ongoing reserve policies of 25% for the general fund and 10% for the Health and Human Services levy fund. The general fund policy tracks the administration's current written policy. The Health and Human Services levy fund tracks recent practice. The HHS fund had reserves of over 15% for 8 of the last 10 years and reserves of over 10% for the remaining 2. Wanting to keep the reserve principle in place but also ensure that HHS money is used for its intended purposes, we chose the lower number. The 10% HHS reserve amounts to just over 1 month of expenditure, a modest requirement. It is important to note that these ordinances allow money within the reserve targets to be spent for a wide variety of emergencies, budget shortfalls, debt obligations, and other unanticipated situations. That is what reserves are for. What the ordinance provide is a way of responding to the need to use reserves, called a replenishment plan. When using reserves, we will prepare a replenishment plan consisting of 3 things. 1, determining the amount of reserves needed. 2, setting a goal as to when the reserves can be restored to the target level. And 3, a plan on how to achieve the restoration. And the plan may be amended as needed later to fit changing circumstances. These ordinances were carefully considered in 4 hearings in the Finance and Budgeting Committee and recommended by the committee. They were amended both for greater flexibility by eliminating supermajority requirements and allowing 120 days to do the replenishment plan, and for greater specificity on identification of need to spend reserves and on the content of the replenishment plan. In my opinion, this program will enable us to provide more public services and more social services, not less, by smoothing out the peaks and valleys of the income we receive and what we need to spend, preventing disruption of important services during financial difficulties. Some have criticized this approach, saying it will constrain future councils. So the question is, does it constrain future councils? The answer is yes, but only to a modest degree. In a future financial difficulty, council would either have to pass a replenishment plan or change the reserve policy, either of which would require only a simple majority vote. It does not dictate how future money will be spent. Rather, it provides a framework for dealing with financial problems. This is exactly the balance you want. Disciplined enough to let the world know we have thought in advance about how we will deal with financial difficulties, and flexible enough to enable a full range of responses. Council should not merely fix the problems of the prior regime. We should aspire to be a leader in adopting best practices. In my opinion, these ordinances, combining discipline and flexibility, will give us one of the best reserve policies in the state. I commend the sponsor, Councilman Greenspan, for his hard work on this issue, and I would ask to be added as a co-sponsor of both ordinances.
Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Well, we have something interesting here to debate. It may seem like a dry issue, even abstract, and in some ways it is, but I believe it goes to the core of the council's responsibilities. Determining the budget, and we do it now biannually, is one of the most important responsibilities that the council has. In my opinion, this proposal actually not only ties our hands and takes away some of the authority that we have as individual councilmen taking part of the budget process, but also future council members and county executives. I believe that this is unnecessary, and it seems to me to be a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist. The county budget is healthy, but I guess the thing that I want to really stress here is that last fall we went through a 2-month budget process. A lot of us spent many hours. There were a lot of, in most areas, of course, we agreed with the administration and agreed with each other, but there were some areas where we had some sharp disagreements over relatively minor amounts of spending, but nevertheless, that's what the budget process is about. Through a process of several weeks, we worked through those differences and passed the unanimous budget. All 11 of us passed the unanimous budget. A pretty amazing feat. So I find it disturbing, with no offense to the sponsor, because he raised these issues well in advance at budget time, that we are here 6 months later now discussing a legislation that is as fundamental to this council's role in the budget as this proposal is. I believe that a perpetual budget is unwise and unnecessary. We look at the budget every 2 years. This is in the spirit, I believe, of legislation that's been introduced into the United States Congress, into state legislatures all over the country, that are too ideological and aimed strictly at constraining spending without any particular purpose. I think it was telling that, and I know the Finance Committee did a lot of hard work on this, it was telling that certain things were removed out of this proposal, like a supermajority, because a supermajority is a very good example, and an example of the sponsor's intent. The supermajority, if you're not aware of it, our legislation has been introduced and sometimes passed in some legislatures around the state that would prevent a tax increase unless a supermajority of members of the legislature were to vote on it, really tying the hands of local government and its ability to deal with crises as they come up. I believe that any future dipping into the surplus, if it was needed, is something that should be dealt with by the council members and the executive who were there at the time. They will not only have the mandate, but they'll have the facts to deal with whatever the situation is. And as much as I am opposed to the perpetual surplus, I'm even more opposed to this replenishment component. If we were to dip even slightly into the surplus, which is healthy, if we were to find it necessary to do that, we would, I believe, send off alarm bells, possibly creating the exact opposite effect that we may be going for here. That if someone's watching, if the bond market's watching, and we suddenly appear to be in some kind of a crisis that's not even a crisis, because we've set up a mechanism that gives us 120 days or whatever we decide to do to decide how we're going to replenish this fund. And then how can we, in advance, certainly we can't know how to replenish the fund in advance. This just sets up a mechanism to do it. Are we talking about fees? Are we talking about laying people off? Are we talking about selling off assets? Would it affect our negotiations with our employees? These are all unknowns to us. And I think they should remain unknown because they are, and that it would be the role, maybe many of us, but maybe some future council, to be able to make the most reasonable decisions about whatever the budget crisis, if it's a crisis or a dip, would be based on the facts and not based on our ability to guess what the future council and executive situation may find themselves in terms of the budget. And so for these reasons, I cannot support this proposal in its current form. And I would hope that after working so hard to get a unanimous support for even the smallest matters in the budget last fall, that we would not have a divided council in terms of this even more fundamental proposal on how this council deals with its budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Anyone else?
Madam President,
Yes.
I appreciate what Councilman Brady was saying, but I can tell you why I'm in support of this proposal and this legislation, and it's for two basic reasons. One is that I think this happens to be a fiscally responsible council and administration, and I think it's valuable for us to enshrine that philosophy in a way that doesn't preclude future councils from making different decisions about how much surplus, but it creates a policy and kind of a warning bell that if you're going to go below a certain amount of reserves, that is cause for extra review. It doesn't tie their hands, but it warns them that we're getting into territory that could be dangerous. The other reason that I'm in favor of it is very simple, and that is it's a recognized best practice by the Government Finance Association, Officer Association, by recognized experts in municipal finance, by bond rating agencies. I think we have a very good chance this year, when our bond rating is up for review, to certainly maintain our rating, if not have an increase in either the outlook or the actual rating. We have a very good case to make that we should have a AAA bond rating, and that if we're able to achieve that rating, that's going to mean that there's going to be where our borrowing costs are going to go down, and we're going to have more money to spend on human services that I know the councilman and the council as a whole feel strongly about. I didn't have, I can tell you in terms of my support of this, it didn't come from any national association or ideological point of view. I just sat down with my fiscal officer and said, we've had an overall philosophy that we want to maintain appropriate levels of reserve. Does it make sense to codify it in some way? And by the way, the reason that we agreed, and this was after conversations with Mr. Steen and I and others within the administration, you don't want to have a policy that actually sets it in stone, because that actually sends a contradictory message to the rating agencies, because then you're taking away your flexibility. But to have a guideline, I think, makes sense. And I personally, for what it's worth to the council, I come from it from a particular point of view, in that when I was a councilman, when I was a city councilman, when I started as a city councilman, we had an appropriate level of reserve in our general fund in the city of Lakewood, and I was there under a couple different administrations where it did dip into dangerous territory. Our bond rating was negatively affected, and I think it would have helped at the time if there had been kind of a warning system there to force us to really struggle with it. As it was, there were 2 council people out of 7 that felt strongly about it. I was one of them at the time. But it wasn't, it hadn't been adopted as kind of a guiding principle of the entity. And I understand what the councilman's saying about trying to have unanimity But I think this is a time where we need to set the principles that we're gonna follow and kind of the traditions that we follow. And I think that this is a helpful one. I respect his opinion greatly, but I think that this would be helpful. I think there will be news coverage of what decision that we make, and I think which will be monitored by the rating agencies also. And I think that and they will be watching what kind of decision we make on this. And I think, not that we defer to their judgment, but I think that it would be the right judgment to support this piece of legislation. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Mr. Germana?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in full support of these two resolutions as well. It isn't like we've cut back and have got these huge surpluses automatically. It's been built over the years. And having reserves is fiscally responsible. That's number one. And now by passing this, we're not saying that councils, just by a majority vote, could go ahead and spend into the reserves. What this sets up is a process where you got to think about it, of how you're going to replace the money. And, if Congress did this, if the state legislature would have done this, if the bank's regulation would have done this, we would have never gone into the dumper like we've had, because they had these loose regulations about lending money for homes and foreclosure, and it's been a mess. All this is saying is that, thank heavens that the county has been conservative in being able to get these reserves. This is not big surpluses. We spend 100% of any new money coming in, but over all these years, we've built up these reserves, and all we're saying is if you're going to dip into them, you got to have a plan, and there's a time limit on having a plan, but we don't have anything in here saying that it's got to be paid with any certain time frame. So I just think it's reasonable.
Mr. Greenspan?
Thank you, Madam President. I brought this legislation forward early at the end of last year, and candidly, I thought this would not be as contentious as it's become because, as Councilwoman Brady said, this was a unanimous vote, at least on the spending thresholds, on the reserve thresholds, so much so that actually in this current proposal, the HHS levy has been reduced by 5% to be more in line with the lowest threshold that we've ever had to utilize any of the reserves. The reason I brought this forward was because, and not to be redundant or repetitive to some of the other comments, but one of the aspirations that we set forward as a council during the budget compilation process was to obtain a AAA bond rating, or at least do what we can to get there. This, as we've heard not only here but in testimony through the budget process and through committee meetings, is a step in that right direction. It is, and obviously the term good is subjective, but I believe it's good fiscal policy to be able to identify what our reserve limits are, and also at the same time to identify if we ever had to utilize the reserves, how would we pay it back? Basically, we're borrowing money from ourselves. How is it and what's the plan in order to restore those funds back to a level that we have all agreed to? The 120 days initially was a concept that was not in the original legislation, and I believe Mr. Germana brought that forward as a look back type of guidance for us, because we may not know the day that we dip in specifically when we utilize the reserves, how we intend to replenish the reserves. The 120 days gives us a fiscal quarter, at least one fiscal quarter, to be able to determine was the reason that the reserves were used, was it because of a one-time issue or a systemic problem facing the county? I believe the 120 days provides enough time for us to be able to assess that situation. To the extent the comment was made about handcuffing future councils, if you look at any and everything that we do, effectively everything we do, every legislation, every ordinance, resolution, or motion of council has the effect of handcuffing future councils. They may not like our council rules 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So you know what? They have the ability to change it. They might not like our ethics ordinance. They can change it. They might not like our procurement ordinance. They can change it. They might not like this. It can be changed. This, to me, is a legacy-setting piece of legislation as to how we define ourselves, not only today, but how we want our government to operate in the years when we're not sitting in these chairs. And that is why I believe that this piece of legislation is important for setting the tone for our county, not only for today, but 15 and 20 years down the road. And I would encourage my colleagues' support on this. Thank you.
Ms. Simon?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a few comments. I've sat through the committee hearings on these issues from the beginning, and I first want to say that this is a lot different than making rules or a lot different than passing other ethics ordinances of that type. This eviscerates our very function as a council body. This is what defines us as a council, is our ability to make budgets and review budgets. And to take this away from future council is not necessary. It also sends a signal that we don't trust future councils or the people that are sitting in these chairs. As to somehow indicate that we wouldn't be in the situation we're in at the Congress or at the federal level because of this, they didn't have this mechanism, is not correct. In fact, it was a lack of regulations of a market that got us to a housing crisis that Mr. Jimana mentioned, mortgage crisis. It was a lack of regulation of banks, not a lack of regulation of Congress. I think we should not be regulated in the future. Every 2 years when we set our budget is a time for us to make a determination what our situation is at that time. That's our job, to look at the facts. We study those facts for months. Every day we sat at these budget meetings and intimately understood what our finances were at that time. And we made a very conservative, took a position to have a reserve at that time. And I think that was reasonable. I think it makes sense at that point to sit down and say, this is what we have, this is what we can do. And that in and of itself is enough, I believe, to set a policy that we are fiscally responsible. In terms of a warning bell, that's one thing. Every 2 years, we know what the threshold is, and if we go below that, that bell will ring. But we don't need a second piece of this in place to force us to replenish. That in and of itself is going to create a news headline that council now has to find a way to replenish this reserve that maybe we only tapped in minimally. That's going to cause a problem. I sat through the hearings and asked repeatedly about a connection between having this forwarding legislation that will handcuff future councils and how that's going to impact our bond rating at this time. And what I was told very clearly is it won't. That there was no discrimination or determination to say that. We already have a reserve policy, not only from this council when it set its budget, but through the administration there's a reserve policy. So it's there. We don't need to compound this again with the hopes that somehow incrementally this is going to impact our bond rating. Nobody, I think, sitting here today would say they don't want a AAA, but this is not the way to do it. So I want that to be clear that I asked that question. If somebody came to me and said this would make a difference and this is a way to make that leap, then I would be more amenable to passing this. But I think it's too much to expect us to go into the future with emergency situations to handcuff our future councils. Let us, every 2 years, look at the facts at that time and trust us to make a fiscally sound decision about our reserves, which, by the way, we've done historically.
Thank you. I'd just like to add my position. I strongly agree with Mr. Brady and Ms. Simon, and sort of incorporate by reference Mr. Brady's remarks. But you talk about the warning bells, and you have the 11 warning bells right here on this council that we are the people elected to watch the store and watch the budget. And we have a reserve policy, and we certainly are not here to disrupt the reserve policy. We also have a very strong reserve. And we don't know in the future what reason we might have to step in and use the reserve. Maybe there was a pandemic or another 9/11, some dire situation. And we certainly think that we know that money will have to be replenished. But why do we have to make a decision now for the people who may be sitting in these chairs 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now? I agree with Ms. Simon. I was very cautious in listening to this point. There's no indication that this legislation will ensure our bond rating. I believe that we are tying the hands of future council on this. We were elected to be the watchdog of the public and their dollars, and that's what we're doing, and I am assured that people in the future will have that. So I just think that this is a rule that we don't need to make. We are operating on a very sound fiscal policy, and why should we make a rule? We don't have this in other legislative bodies. I don't see it, and I am opposed to it. Anyone else? Mr. Germano?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, there's two views. There are two different views. I want to put my name to this. I believe in this strongly.
All right. Yes, Mr. Miller?
I'd like to respond to a couple of things that's been said. First of all, in Columbus, they have a piece of legislation in place called the Income Tax Reduction Fund. And what it specifies is that if there's money left over at the end of any year, first it goes into the general fund reserve, and if the general fund reserve reaches a certain level, then whatever is left over cannot be spent for any programs or services, but automatically goes back to the taxpayers in the form of an income tax reduction in the following year. And so that legislation actually dictates how money is spent. But, and I just want to make the point that this legislation is nothing like that. It in no way prescribes how money is to be spent. It only sets forward a general process or framework. Secondly, I would point out that currently our general fund reserves are approximately 40%, and our health and human services reserves are approximately 20%, meaning that we could spend a whole lot of reserves before triggering the limits in this ordinance. I do not think that in any way this limits the budgeting process. We can change this legislation at any time by simple majority vote, and if we need to and have to, it can simply be a provision within a budget bill. It simply provides a general process for dealing with financial emergencies, and so I commend it to my colleagues and urge their support. Thank you.
Mr. Greenspan?
Thank you, Madam President. When I did my research in putting the original thoughts to this legislation together, I actually modeled it after Hamilton County. That not only has a threshold, but also has a replenishment, has language in the replenishment, in the ordinance itself. So this is as the executive said, a best practices that is being used, and that was just the one example that I used in designing this, originally designing this legislation. The point was made regarding the spending of the money and the current amounts that are in the reserves. If we were to eliminate the reserve limit and spend below the reserves that are in there now, as it was stated earlier, we are already spending 100% of the taxes that come in every year because the reserves have been built up. If we at any point use the delta between what the revenue that comes in and the reserve limit, we are, and say it's 10 or 25%, we are in essence spending 100+% during that specific year. With no threshold limit in place, there is the opportunity to spend, if we're at 100 and what was the number for the Health and Human Services? 20? We could spend in the first year 120% of what we take in. And that, to me, is not sound fiscal policy. The essence of that delta above 100% equates to stimulus money. And we've seen throughout the country how stimulus dollars, although well-intended at the time of their, well, may have been well-intended, depending on your opinion, upon their spending, has caused significant issues for various public entities throughout the country. So I would urge that and my colleagues to understand that we are already spending 100% of what we take in. Why would we want to spend more than that unless we were in a situation where an emergency need came up and the money would be there to cover that need? Thank you.
Ms. Simon?
Madam President, just a few comments. We actually, we have voted not to spend these reserves. So why are we implementing and putting something into place for a problem that doesn't exist? We're speculating. And as Mr. Miller said, well, if we have to, we can come back and change it. Well, why put this in place to force us to come back to change it at all? Every 2 years, we will come in and look at the facts and everything that's happening and make that decision then. In terms of stimulus money, frankly, that's what was enabled us to avoid a major depression. So that's a good example, Mr. Greenspan, of why we should have the ability to tap in if we need to into reserves to make sure that if there is such an emergency that we can tackle it without having to go through hoops and be regulate each other is the effect of this, a chilling effect that we are just regulating ourselves and hamstringing us. So I wanted to make a comment about the stimulus and that it actually enabled us to avoid a very difficult situation.
Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Miller?
In response to Ms. Simon's question, the reason for putting this in place, in my opinion, it would be a good thing to let everybody know that we have a general framework in place that we've given some thought to as to how we'll deal with a financial emergency if it arises. Thank you.
Recognizing this is a very healthy and discussion with two opposing sides, and I appreciate Mr. Fitzgerald's comments. These are decisions that council will have to make, council members will have to make individually. I hope that between now and our meeting in 2 weeks that you can consider the arguments given by each side, and come to some consensus among ourselves as to this very, very important issue. We need to strongly consider all of the arguments and also strongly consider the impact, the long-term consequences of our decision in this matter, because as I indicated before, we are hamstringing, in my opinion, we are hamstringing our future persons who will sit in the seat. So we will have this matter on again for May the 8th, and we'll hopefully everyone will have an opportunity to come to a consensus by that time. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Germana.
You know, as much as it sounds like we disagree, we really are together because everyone does not want to spend more than the reserves. I mean, there's not this desire to go out there and spend this money. It's just a matter of if we have to spend it, should there be a plan? Should we be thinking about how we spend it and if we can recoup it, because we may in the end not be able to recoup it. So we're all on the same side.
Right, it's a philosophical debate, and Mr. Brady, this is our last comment, and we're going to move on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opinion that everybody has expressed. I hope that it will be important that the difference of opinion on this important issue be taken into consideration, and that over the next couple of weeks, that as we discuss these matters, that we will be able to find a place where we can all be together as we were 6 months ago. I don't think this is nearly as complicated as it was for us to line up 11 votes for a budget. And I think if we're reasonable, we should be able to come to a consensus over how we can come together as a council in determining what we think is a proper process for the budget.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brady. Item 14, consideration of a resolution for first reading adoption under suspension of the rules. These are items that are fiscal matters that need to have, they're time sensitive. Ms. Simon, is there a motion for under Rule 9D and 12A?
Yes. Madam President, I move we suspend the rules.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Simon and seconded by Mr. Gallagher to suspend the rules. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The rules are suspended. Item 0073.
Resolution number 2012-0073, a resolution amending the 2012-2013 biennial operating budget for 2012 by providing for additional fiscal appropriations from the general fund and other funding sources, for appropriation transfers between budget accounts, and for cash transfers between budgetary funds in order to meet the budgetary needs of various county departments, offices, and agencies, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt. Second.
Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Is there anyone in the administration, Mr. Miller, did you have any comments on these?
Madam President, this legislation contains an important contract relating to the property consolidation program and some other engineering contracts, plus the appropriation of grant funds. It's important to move these things forward, so I would encourage my colleagues that we go ahead and pass this under suspension.
Right, and once again, for the public, all these items are available online to show the various transfers between funds. All right, any other questions, any comments? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Item 15, consideration of resolutions for first reading and referral to committee.
Resolution number 2012-0074, a resolution declaring that public convenience and welfare requires resurfacing of Dennison Avenue from Fulton Road to Pearl Road in the city of Cleveland. Total estimated construction cost $850,000. Finding that special assessments will neither be levied nor collected to pay for any part of the county's costs of said improvement, and authorizing the county executive to enter into an agreement of cooperation with said municipality in connection with said project.
And this may go to Public Works.
Resolution number 2012-0075, a resolution declaring that public convenience and welfare requires resurfacing of Riverview Road from Brookside Road to Fitzwater Road in the cities of Brecksville and Independence. Total estimated construction cost $600,000. Finding that special assessments will neither be levied nor collected to pay for any part of the county's costs of said improvement, and authorizing the county executive to enter into agreements of cooperation with said municipalities in connection with said project.
Let's go to Public Works. Item 16, committee reports and consideration of resolutions for second reading under suspension of the rules. This has already gone to committee, so we need a motion to suspend the rules pursuant to Rule 9D. Ms. Simon?
We suspend the rules.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Simon, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The rules are suspended as to the third reading of these matters. Item 0050.
Resolution number 2012-0050, a resolution authorizing a contract with United Way of Greater Cleveland Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $821,587.50 for food and allocation of funds for hunger centers serving needy residents in Cuyahoga County for the period April 1, 2012 through December 31, 2012. Authorizing the county executive to execute the contract and all other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
I moved by Mr. Rogers and seconded by Ms. Simon. Any discussion on this? Anyone from the administration have anything to say? Okay. If no other questions, we can call the roll. Call for a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. The ayes have it. Item 0063.
Resolution number 2012-0063, a resolution declaring that public convenience and welfare requires resurfacing of Sprague Road from Marks Road to Prospect Road in the cities of Berea and Strongsville. Total estimated construction cost $700,000. Finding that special assessments will neither be levied nor collected to pay for any part of the county's costs of said improvement, and authorizing the county executive to enter into agreements of cooperation with said municipalities in connection with said project.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jones and seconded by Mr. Rogers. Is there any discussion on this? This was heard in the Public Works Committee. All right, if no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Item 0064.
Resolution number 2012-0064, a resolution declaring that public convenience and welfare requires resurfacing of York Road from Bennett Road to State Route 82 in the city of North Royalton. Total estimated construction cost $700,000. Finding that special assessments will neither be levied nor collected to pay for any part of the county's costs of said improvement, and authorizing the county executive to enter into an agreement of cooperation with said municipality in connection with said project.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jones and seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Any discussion on this project? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Item 0065.
Resolution number 2012-0065, a resolution making an award on requisition number 21215 to OR Associates of Florida in the amount not to exceed $715,005 for right-of-way acquisition services in connection with improvement of Pleasant Valley Bagley Road from Pearl Road to York Road in the cities of Middleburg Heights and Parma, authorizing the county executive to execute the contract and all other documents consistent with said award and this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Jones and seconded by Ms. Simon. Any discussion on this project? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. 0066.
Number 2012-0066, a resolution making an award on requisition number 22552 to Burton Scott Contractors in the amount not to exceed $2,213,811.02 for resurfacing of Green Road from Chagrin Boulevard to Fairmount Boulevard in the cities of Beechwood and Shaker Heights, authorizing the county executive to execute the contract and all other documents consistent with said award and this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jones and seconded by Mr. Rogers. Is there any discussion on this? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Item 0067.
Resolution number 2012-0067, a resolution making an award on requisition number 22624 to Suburban Maintenance and Construction Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $908,993.93 for replacement of Austin Powder Drive Bridge number 137 over a branch of Tinkers Creek in the village of Glen Willow, authorizing the county executive to enter into a contract consistent with said award, and authorizing the county engineer on behalf of the county executive to make an application for allocation from county motor vehicle $5 license tax funds in said amount to fund said contract.
Move to adopt.
Moved by Mr. Jones and seconded by Ms. Simon. Any discussion on this matter? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Item 0068.
Resolution number 2012-0068, a resolution authorizing a revenue-generating agreement with Woods Cove II as purchaser and Access Capital Management Incorporated as servicer in the amount not to exceed $7 million for the sale of tax lien certificates, authorizing the county executive to execute the agreement and all other documents consistent with this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Second.
I moved by Ms. Simon and seconded by Mr. Gallagher. All right, and Mr. Miller.
Madam President, I would like to make a motion to substitute for the existing version, the version that's been passed out by the clerk, reflecting the increase in the total amount to $13,214,970.23.
All right, so on the amendment, it's been moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Mr. Germana to amend item 0068. Is there any discussion on the amendment? We're actually going to get more money from the tax lien sale than we anticipated, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The resolution is so amended. Any discussion on the merits on the resolution as amended? Anyone from the fiscal officer? Mr. Steen, did you have any? Mr. Stensenbrenner?
Thank you. Rich Sensenbrenner, County Treasurer, on behalf of the Fiscal Office, and thank you for inviting me up. I believe most of you were here for the Finance Committee meeting where we went through in pretty good detail, 20 minutes or a half an hour in terms of the cell again. Some of you had some questions. We did some follow-up. With that, I hope that was satisfactory for those of you who asked questions. I'll just reiterate what I feel is really the two big improvements we did from when you saw us last fall. And really the two things we did better were, one, we had much more time to work with our partners, our suburban partners in the city of Cleveland, the CDCs, to make sure any parcels that needed to come off the list did come off the list. Certainly, I think we did a good job last time, but it was a rush at the end of the process, which we rectified this time and really got a big head start. And I think that worked well. And then two, of course, working with council again last fall, we got kind of a late start. And so we asked for your indulgence to waive the rules and bypass some of the readings. This time, again, it was our intent to make sure that we did this to the best of our ability and gave you plenty of time for your consideration, first reading, committee hearing, second reading, and third reading. Obviously, it's still a tight time frame, but we were able to achieve that goal. With that, I just want to thank the Treasury team, Michael Sweeney, who's here with me today, who heads up our taxpayer services, as well as Christy Neff, who isn't here, but she heads up the tax certificate sale process and does a fine job. So with that, if there certainly I'd hope and encourage your positive support of this, and I'll take any questions if you have any.
Any questions, Mr. Sensenbrenner? All right, we prepared to vote? All those in favor indicate by, on the amended, substitute, okay, thank you, Mr. Germano. On the substitute resolution, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The substitute resolution is adopted. All right, item 0070.
Resolution number 2012-0070, a resolution making an award on requisition number 22439 to Motorola Solutions Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $2,071,650 for the purchase of interoperable radios and vehicular chargers for the Department of Public Safety and Justice Services, authorizing the county executive to execute the contract and all other documents consistent with said award and this resolution, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Moved by Ms. Simon and seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Is there any further discussion on this matter?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Gallagher.
Madam Chair, I just want to let the public know that the Public Safety Committee held an extensive hearing on this resolution. We heard testimony from those protesting the recommended award. They raised a number of objections to the process and to the recommendation of the lowest and best bidder. We heard from the Department of Public Safety and Justice Services, from the Fiscal Office, the Fiscal Officer, the Law Department, the Law Director, and the Prosecutor's Office. Each of those offices explained in detail the process followed and their conclusions that the process was fair and legal. Most importantly, we heard from the end users of these products who tested the proposed radios in the field in a variety of conditions. Those users, police and fire personnel, our frontline safety forces, favored the Motorola radios as the best functioning radios in the field. Those same users expressed concerns about the radios proposed by those objecting to this award. I am confident in relying on the judgment of those who will use these radios in emergency situations as to what will work best. The Public Safety Committee is respectfully recommending approval of our 2012-0070 this evening.
All right, any other comments, Ms. Simon?
Thank you, Madam President. As a member of the Safety Committee, I want to commend the chair for allowing everyone to have a fair say, an opportunity to speak. I thought it went extremely well in terms of allowing us to hear the detail of what took place. I just want to say a couple things more, is that we put a procurement process in place. We put the guidelines in place to be followed, and I'm comfortable and confident that these procedures were followed. So as a council person, I'm going to abide by what we put in place, and I have full faith in our safety forces and to make sure our residents are secure. I believe that our safety forces are the ones who are best to make the decision on what radios and what supporting services they need to ensure the safety of our county residents. So I encourage support of this particular piece.
Mr. Germana?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just say that this particular resolution is something that really made me give a great deal of thought and consideration. And I'm sure with all the information that was provided to us, all council members took a lot of time in deliberating. I can tell you from my experience, I know that safety forces, from a municipal point of view for police and fire, it's the most amount of money that we spend with our tax dollars. And I think the evidence of recent activities of having confidence not only will save policemen and firemen, but people that are victims of violence or in a fire situation. If the safety forces do not have the confidence in the equipment, there may be hesitation. So I think what swayed me the most is the confidence of a safety official relying on the equipment and having the faith that, and I think it will save lives just by the confidence that they have in the equipment, in the recommendations that they made.
Mr. Greenspan?
Thank you, Madam President. It's my belief that government, in some of its functions, is to provide the tools and environment for those who provide the services that are needed to our residents. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. I defer on the technological specs to those who are going to be using the equipment. And I support those decisions from those first responders who are going to be utilizing the equipment and not only to support the protection of their lives, but also those to which they are entrusted to respond and answer those emergency calls. I defer to the gentleman, and I said this at the meeting, with white shirts and gold badges, because they know best what's going to be used in the field to protect themselves and to do the job they need to do. It's responsible for us to provide the tools that they need, and I believe that this legislation, this resolution does just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll? Yea vote would be for adoption, and against would be, no would be against.
Calling the roll for resolution number 2012-0070. Mr. Greenspan?
Yay.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Germana?
Yes, please add my name.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Schron is absent. Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item 17, any miscellaneous committee reports? Ms. Simon?
Chair, just to say that Justice Affairs is meeting this Friday at 11:30 to discuss a couple issues.
Mr. Miller?
Madam President and my colleagues, Finance Committee will meet next Monday at our usual committee time, and we will continue discussing the legislation that was held at the last meeting regarding the property management process.
Thank you.
Mr. Greenspan?
Thank you, Madam President. Today in the Ethics Committee, we voted out amendments to the Inspector General Ordinance. We will be hearing, hopefully, final amendments to the Ethics Ordinance, as well as a motion of council. And more specifically, within the next week, I hope to come out and meet with the Council President to set the calendar for the charter review process. we will begin charter review hearings next Tuesday at 1 o'clock.
Anything else? Ms. Conwell?
Yes, Madam Chair. The Human Resources Appointments and Equity Committee will continue the legislation for Ban the Box on Thursday, May 3rd at 10 o'clock.
Anything else?
Madam President? Public Works will meet this Thursday at 11 to deal with the items referred to committee today.
Anything else? All right. Any miscellaneous business? And is there any public comment related or unrelated to the agenda?
No one has signed in to speak, Madam Chair.
Okay, then we're going to go back to item 12. For our executive session, all meetings of the Cuyahoga County Council are open to the public under the Ohio Open Meeting Law. Under the law, council may go into executive session during a meeting for specifically authorized purposes. During executive session, council confers outside the hearing of the public. Council may not make any decisions about any matter in executive session. All decisions are made in public. This evening, council will go into executive session to discuss a labor negotiation matter and also some pending litigation. During this time, our live stream will be down, and we will ask those who are not specifically needed for the executive session to leave council chambers. Anyone may re-enter the room after the session has ended. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Conwell and seconded by Mr. Greenspan. All right, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Moving to executive session, Mr. Greenspan?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Germana?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Conwell?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Ms. Simon?
Yes.
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, motion carries. We'll go into executive session, and we'll clear the room. We need the law director and Ms. Hurley, and I understand Ms. Hurley has a new associate that she's asking to stay in the room with her. All right. And our staff and everyone else will be leaving. Okay.
I've got a fire safety